Many times when you get a new snake, it's pretty friendly at first because we've bred friendly snakes and friendly species or docile species of snakes, but occasionally you may get a snake that is not as friendly as others and you're not sure what to do to tame it down. There's no such thing as an aggressive snake, only defensive ones, but today we're going to be showing you some techniques on how you can tame down a not so friendly snake. The most important thing to do with a snake that is not tame yet is to just hold it, in all honesty. The more you handle it, the more it will get used to you, and the more it will realize that you are not a predator or prey, and it will just become calmer and calmer with time. We recommend taking a timid snake out twice a day for 15 minutes each, unless it's in shed or just ate, of course. But doing this for a couple of weeks will drastically calm that snake down because it'll start to earn, you'll start to earn its trust. However, it can be pretty intimidating to just reach right into a defensive snake's enclosure. I won't say aggressive because really they're just scared of you. So I'm going to be using some examples with our own snakes to show you some techniques for how to not get bit when you are handling that snake during its training sessions. Some species of snakes are more likely to just be huffy and hiss at you rather than bite, and this is most commonly seen in hognose snakes. Check this out. In here I have a pair of pastel hogs, males on the left, females on the right, and immediately when I open up this bin, she is huffy. See her spreading out her cheeks? She's trying to act big and scary to try to intimidate me, and this can be intimidating to new hognose snake owners if you're not used to it. Oh, she's really trying to scare me now. You can even hear her hissing, she's whipping around. So a lot of people would see this and just kind of be scared and leave the snake alone. But really what you have to do is you have to overcome that fear and you have to handle the snake anyway. Otherwise the snake's going to learn that being huffy will make you go away. And you don't want them to know that or to learn that. So you just have to reach right in. This is what we call the confident grab. I'm going to move her plant out of the way first. And even though she's hissing, you just grab the thick part of their body. Hognose snakes typically won't bite, they just hiss at you. So you pick them up in the thick part of their body, support the rest of the body, and after you hold them she's going to be pretty huffy for a little bit, but give her a couple minutes and she'll calm right down. Oh, she's trying to scare you guys watching her now. It's okay, look at those chubby cheeks. You just have to call their bluff, really. They're not gonna bite. The hognose snakes will usually only bite something if they want to eat it. These are not going to bite you out of fear from our experience, or at least it's a very, very rare thing to happen. So I'm going to hold her anyway. I'm going to kind of desensitize her to touching by petting her body, holding her, kind of moving around a little bit. Sometimes they'll spaz out and they'll just try to slither off of your hands. I'm sorry, that movement scared you. So you just have to move your hands with the snake and eventually they slow down and run out of steam. See, look at this. It's taken maybe a minute. Her cheeks aren't flared out like they were before. And this is because she has realized that if I was a predator, I probably would have eaten her by now. So she now thinks that I'm not a predator, so maybe I'm not that bad. So I'm going to touch her a little bit more, see if she huffs up again or hisses. Okay, a little bit of hissing, a little bit of cheek puffing, so we'll just give her a little bit more time. And this is what you would do for 15 minutes twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, or the evening. Now, of course, you don't want to wake a diurnal species of snake up, like a hognose snake. They're awake during the day, so you don't want to wake them up at night. That's just going to confuse them and really stress them out. You want to hold them during the time of day where they are naturally awake anyway. See, look at this. She's calmed down. She's no more hissing. Oh, never mind, she proved me wrong. But it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Well, I'm not going to hold her for the full 15 minutes, but I can guarantee you after just 10 minutes of holding her like this, there would be no more hoods, there would be no more hissing, and it would just take several sessions before, even when you take her out, she's not going to do that anymore. So we're going to set this girl back, and let's move on to a snake that, when it's defensive, it might actually bite. For this, we're going to use my friend's Woma python. Now, this is not my snake, and I only have it for a day because I'm actually delivering it to him from the Tinley show, so that's why I couldn't find an appropriately sized cave. So this is too big, and this is a very basic setup, but it's for a day, so it's fine. This Woma has a bit of an attitude. See, we're in a nice strike pose. Oh, she found my hands too, and she'll probably tag me if I let her. Yep. Yep, she'll try to tag. So this is a snake that would probably intimidate a lot of people to try to hold. But again, you just have to kind of let them, at this size, they can't really do much damage. So you just have to reach in anyway. Pick them up. Did you see that? If you're confident about it, they're not going to strike you. It's when you're kind of egging them on around them that they're more likely to strike. I'll do it again here. I'll set her in. I know, I'm sorry, this is stressful. It's when you reach in and you're nervous about it and you're like coming in and out that they get scared, and that's when they're going to strike at you. But when you just reach right in, pick them up, they don't strike because they don't really have time to, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm being held now. And she's going to move around a bit, so I'm going to move my hands with her. And give her a little bit of time though, and she'll calm right down too, just like that hognose snake. See, she's not trying to bite anymore, she's just using me as a perch. The biggest thing is just to reach in and use that confident grab technique that we talked about earlier. Here we go. Alright, she's already calmed down. As long as you support their whole body, and you don't give them you're not hurting them, you're not giving them something to be afraid of, they pick up on that after just a few minutes. Yeah, you're not an aggressive snake, you were just scared. You're just not used to people. Now if I were to hold her and kind of egg her on again, yep, she'd be back in that strike pose. But it's again these scary movements to them that you want to avoid. You just want to calmly hold the snake and they'll calm down too. And I know she's not going to bite me. I can trust her head right next to my fingers because my hands aren't the threat. My hands are simply the perch, and she's not going to bite what she's sitting on. She's only going to try to bite what's coming at her as like a threat. Like right now the camera is getting pretty close to her and she thinks that that is the threat. It's okay, it's just a camera. So now that she's calmed down, I'm just going to pet her with my thumb or whatever and kind of desensitize her, get her used to human contact. And this is what I would do for the 15-minute training session. Just let her calm down, pet her, and then after 15 minutes or so, put her back in the enclosure and do it again later. Did you see that? I didn't get bit once, if I was confident. Actually, she tried to tag me earlier, but never actually tagged, so they were kind of bluff strikes. But not a single bite, even from a, what some people would say aggressive, but I would say just a defensive snake. Most of the time, snakes will bite in fear and more of a self-defense, and that bite will be something it's called a tag, where they bite and let go instantly. It's just a warning bite. But the other reason a snake might bite, even though this is more uncommon, is when a snake thinks that you are food. So to avoid this, you can just simply wash your hands to make sure they don't smell like mouse or rabbit or whatever the snake normally eats. And you can make sure to handle the snake often if you are feeding it in its enclosure. Because if the only time the snake interacts with you is when you're reaching in with food, it will eventually learn to associate your hands with food coming, and they might mistake your hand for actually being food. This association actually has happened with one of our snakes that we currently have. Inside of this bin is a bull snake that we are raising up for breeding purposes, and the only time I interact with her is to either clean or to feed, so she thinks my hand is food. So here's the kind of response you would get from a snake that associates your hand with food. Yep, there it is. See, I kind of egged her on for it, but she is grabbing, she's wrapping, so she thinks she's killing me. And usually they wouldn't wrap. If they think you're a threat, they're just going to, again, bite and let go. It's just a warning, but she actually legit thinks that I'm food. Snakes are cute, but they're not that bright. So to avoid this, all you have to do is, if you feed your snake in its enclosure, and whether you feed in the enclosure or outside of it is a whole different controversial subject of its own that we actually talk about in this video right here. But if you feed in the enclosure, make sure that throughout the week you are handling that snake too, so it doesn't make that association.
Where's she biting you at?
Her head's right here.
Oh. Did she get you, like, the crotch of your finger?
She's, like, biting on my knuckle.
Oh, okay.
Wonder if you can see her under a...
I can kind of... Oh,
there she is. Now, if this was a snake that I wanted to tame down at this point, where she has made that association, I would recommend, instead of reaching in with hands where you might get bit, using something like a snake hook. And this is what you would use to take her out of her environment, and then she would learn that, oh, I'm not being fed right now, I am being handled, and then you could take her off of the hook. And then eventually she would probably, if you held her enough and did not feed her when you reached in, she would lose that connection between hands and food. So it just is all like mental training that it takes with snakes who have a really strong appetite. Aww.
You must have stopped having a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah, I guess. I'm dead now. Even when a snake bites and hangs on, they usually will make that connection actually, and they'll let go eventually. She's still constricting my arm, so she actually might bite again. But they'll usually eventually realize that, oh, this is way too big for me to handle, and then they'll let go anyway. So there's techniques to get a snake to stop biting you, by the way, that we talk about in this video right here, but we're not going to go over that now. I should also mention that I did kind of egg her on this time, but usually when I open up her bin, she slithers right at me with mouth open, and I do kind of have to be careful when I open up the bin. This time she was actually being pretty docile, so I did kind of egg her on a little bit, but you can still see she had that reaction. Because if she didn't have that connection, she would not have wrapped around my hand as if it were a prey item. Even if your snake bites you and wraps and hangs on for several minutes, it's not that big of a deal, to be completely honest. That bull snake was the average size of a snake that most people would keep as a pet, like a corn snake or a smaller ball python, and at the age where they might be a little bit testy still and need some socialization. But even that wasn't bad. As you can see, she was on for several minutes. It looks worse than it actually is because snakes have an anticoagulant in their saliva, and that makes your body bleed a little bit more than it normally would with another cut, which is actually a good thing because it pushes out the bacteria from their mouths as you bleed a little bit. And then you just clean it up. I won't see anything left behind from this bite, and there won't be any scars. It's just little tiny pinpricks. Of course, bigger snakes can cause more damage since they have bigger teeth, but it's still just a row of pinpricks, and bigger snakes are more kept by advanced hobbyists anyway. But most snakes that are commonly kept in captivity, especially with beginners, corn snakes, ball pythons, milk snakes, things like that, they're not going to cause much damage. I'm going to clean up my hand though, and I'm going to show you one more example of a baby snake that thinks he's all that, and how you would again use that confident grab technique. Well, I got it all cleaned up, and look, like I said, just little pinpricks, nothing too serious. Anyway, in here we have one of our baby bull snakes from earlier this summer, and this in front of him, he's gonna strike at me, I'm sure. Yep, there he is. This is just blood from one of his mice that he actually ate last night, so that's just what that is. But we're gonna pick this up. As you can see, he's already in a bad attitude, but he's not being aggressive, he's just being defensive. And if I were to egg him on, he would strike at me and he would tag me, but if I just reach right on in, even mouth open at me as I'm reaching for him, he doesn't bite. So you just have to go on in there, pick them up by a nice supportive area of their body, and he's not hissing anymore, he's not striking, he now sees my hands as just perches. His tail is buzzing, but that's nothing, that's what bull snakes just do, and he's calmed right down. So again, as you can see, the confident grab technique on defensive snakes anyway works every time. This, by the way, is the hypo snow that we held back from earlier this year. They're also called albino ivory mutations. Basically, he's white-sided, albino, and hypo, all in one. And if you look underneath his chin, he's got some almost transparent scales on his belly and under his chin there, so I'm really curious to see what those look like when he grows up. He's a calm snake now, just took a minute, literally just a minute of handling, and now he's just fine. And with a snake like this, the more you handle them, the more frequently, and the longer you hold them, the more they'll calm down. They can always be tamed. It just takes a little bit of patience and some TLC. Hopefully these techniques helped you out and how to deal with an aggressive snake, but these techniques really only work with ground-dwelling species of snakes. The arboreal species like green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, things like that, it's a whole different story on how to properly handle and tame those. And we actually cover the right techniques for arboreal species in this video right here that you can watch afterwards. But again, hopefully today's video was at least somewhat helpful, and thanks for watching, and see you next time.